Hello, senior2 is still with the stage and requirement to create our project. Our second stage, of course, creating the database table. How to create this database? Of course, if you know the SQL language or SQL language stands for structure query language, you can write the code or the proper code to create your database. Or you can use an easy way. This one we will use using the MySQL app. Of course, before we start knowing how to create the database and how to do it with yourself, let's start reviewing some basic concepts. After all, what is a database? A database is like a storage or space. You could save many data that's related to each other. But where we save it? Do we save it in space? Of course not. We need something called tables. What is a table? Actually, a table is a main component of each database, and it has consists of too many things. Two things consist of records and field. Let's start find out what is a record and what is a field inside your table. The record represent the row. Yes, again, the records represent the row inside your database. That's why you will hear me say it as a record. And it contained only one person data, of course. Yes, contain only one person data. You can't insert more than one data for each person inside the row. Yes, if you look this row, you have Muhammad. He's a male. His birth date is January 1, 2000, and his phone number, let's say, for example, this one. So you can't insert Sama in the same row as Muhammad. It's only contain one personal data. That's it. The field represent the column. Yes, this is called the field. This area called the field. But the row is like selecting this line. This is called a row or record. So the field is represent, of course, the column inside your database. And by the way, each column contain many records. Yes, if you look at this column name, you will find a record for Muhammad, a record for Sama, a record for Heba, and a record for Ahmed. And in this column, it contain one data for each record. Again, one data for each record. You have the record of Muhammad, this one, the name, the type, the birth date, the phone number for Muhammad, but inside the field you have only one data, the name, for each record. Yes, that's why we call the field contains many records, but only one data for this record. By the way, when you create your database, you should know how this table related to each other inside this database. How could you create more than one table and make it related to each other inside this database? Of course, you have to know the relation in this table. You have many relations, by the way, inside the database. But to link the database first with your table, you have to set something called the primary key. The primary key field is very important when you select this one, because this field doesn't repeat it. If you look at this table, you can't find some field that consider as a primary key. Why? You could find too many students named Muhammad. Of course, in case of the type, you have only two types, so it will be repeated more and more. Also, the birth date, you could find two person has the same birth date. It could happen. The phone number maybe, but it's still not an effective field that you will use as a primary key. To link this table with your database, you have to insert another field called an ID. The ID of the student can be repeated inside the table. That's why it's a unique number. You must set the primary key on a field that doesn't repeat, such as your national ID. You can't have two persons has the same national ID, of course. So you must identify the type of relationship. This one is also very important, but after you set the primary key. And like I told you, the field that doesn't repeat it, you can set it as a primary key. You have three main relationship in database: one to one, one to many, many to many. Let forget about this definition. Let me give you a small example. For one to one, how many computer subject you study in your school? You just study one subject. That's one. Yes. And how many teachers teach you the computer subject inside your school? It's just one teacher. So your relation between the computer subject and the teacher to you that teach, the subject is one to one. Yes, this is a one to one relationship. But let us take this one. How many teachers do you have? You have many teachers. You have many teachers. Yes. And each subject, how many teachers do you have for each subject? Just one teacher for each subject. You can't have two teachers of English at the same time. You can't have two teachers of science at the same time. You can't have two teachers of math at the same time. You have only one teacher that teach you a certain subject, but you have many teachers teach you a lot of subjects. That's called one to many. Or let us take something else. And the last but not least, of course, many to many relationship. What is the meaning of many to many relationship? We will take also the example of the student and teacher. Each teacher has many students, and each student has many teachers. This is called many to many. Yes, this is a relation of many to many. So inside this field, you may find something related, one field related to many fields, or one field related to a one field. It depends on how the table goes and how you write it and how you set the primary key for each table. And it depends on the data inside the table itself. So this is very important. You have to know the relationship. You have to set the primary key and choose the relationship for each table, and you should know why we use this app or MySQL app. You have, of course, you have many databases such as an Oracle, Microsoft Access, you have the SAP, you have MySQL, you have a lot of database types. But we use a MySQL because, of course, it's a freeware, it's an open source, and it also will give you all the handle of many amount or a huge amount of data. And of course, you could use it free, and it's a simple one. You will find out now in the practical exercise that we'll take. But before we get to this one, let's start knowing what is a query. A query is a very important part for me, actually. Let me give you a small example. When you ask When you open, of course, the Facebook account of yours, you start typing the username or the password. You will insert the user, you will insert the password for your Facebook account. Then you will start clicking on the sign in button. Actually, in this process, something happened called a query. It's like the user asking a question for the database. Yes, this application will go to check on your database. Does I have a user called Hassan? Yes, I do. Does his password is this password? Yes, he does. So he will open the account for you. A query is a question from the user to database to display data. So you have to get an answer for this question. That's called a query, asking the server or database something and the database will give you an answer for it. This is called a query. That's why we will need it inside our database. Our exercise start with running the Zam program. This is Zam program I already installed in my devices. So I will run the Zam program. And of course I'm waiting for it to run. Yes, it's open. When it's open, you have to start two servers. The Apache server and the MySQL app. So you will click on start and you'll check if it's ready. Yes, it's already done. Give you the green mark. Then you will click on the MySQL and it's already also started. So the next step, you will open any web browser in your website, in your device. So I will open the Microsoft Edge. I'm using a Windows 10. So I will write down an HTTP / and I will write local host /php myadmin. And I will click enter. Yes, you will write down this URL. Is a very important one. You should know. And after it's load, it will open something like this one. You will click on the database button. Yes, this one. It will load. You have to enter the database name first. So we will name it as a DB dictionary. We need to name it in this way. So let's start. So you will write down the database name, a DB dictionary. You will choose the creation, then create. Press, of course, the create button. You will find out that the DB dictionary already created in this one, but it's still an empty. You have to create a table. You will name the table as terms. You will set the number of columns. Then you will go to go. Yes, you have the field, name of the field. You could insert it inside this one. So we'll start with the first field is the ID. We need to write down each name of your field. The first one is an ID. The second one is the terms or term, maybe. Okay. This one is a trans, stands for a translation. This one for definition. This one for a picture. And inside this, you will mention the data type inside each field. Inside, of course, the ID, you need an integer, you need numbers. And inside terms, you need a varchar type. You will write a certain text, maybe it's symbols. the transition, you also need a varchar data type. This one you will set it as a varchar data type, and this one also you could use it as a varchar. It's okay. The values or the length value, each one should have a certain value. You can insert the maximum number to something. Let's say, for example, you will set the length of the number you could insert is 11 number. You can't exceed this number, by the way. In the terms, you can insert until a 500 letter. You can't exceed this value also, and this one will set it as a 500, and this one also. Let's set this one for a 300. So in the default value you should leave it, but in this one you will use something called a UTF-8. I will give you a hint until I found the UTF. Could you help me with the UTF? I can't find it actually. Yes. We will going to check with the UTF. Yes, I guess we found the UTF. So I will choose the UTF-8. I will get to tell you what is a UTF-8. You're still searching. Yes, UTF-8. This one is also a UTF-8. So we have to go down. This is UTF-32. This is an 8. Yes, and this one also. No. Yes. A UTF-8 in this collision, of course, give you the possibility to display the Arabic language. If you need to write anything in your database or in your website and display it on the web browser in Arabic language, you should use the UTF-8 CI. This one is very important. You already know this encoding inside HTML, but it's also you could use it inside the database. In case, of course, don't forget, before you save your column, before you save your table, you should set the primary key. Which one of those fields represent for you a primary key or a field that doesn't repeat it? Yes, exactly, correct answer. The ID represents the primary key, so in the index you will set it as a primary key. Yes, exactly. You will set it as a primary key, so we have to save this table after all, after we finish inserting our main fields that we will use in our project, the data type, the length values inside this field or in this record, of course, that you will use, and the collision or the encoding you will use, and the primary key you already set, so you have to save your table. After saving or processing your table, you will find out the project, the database, and you will find out the table inside your database, the columns, and so on. Yes, this is our column. We will find the key. The primary key is represented by the ID. Inside each one, you could change something or you could edit something inside, of course, this one. That was the introduction of how to create a database using the using the Zam program and MySQL database app. This is a very important one. This is a very important lesson. You should know this practical exercise, and don't forget, you will run the Zam again, start running the Apache and MySQL. You will write down localhost slash php myadmin, this part, then press enter. Then, then the third part, you will click on create database, start writing the name of your database, start writing the collision, then create the table, insert the, the fields or the columns name, insert the data type, insert the collision inside each table, each field. This means the encoding, and it will display the Arabic word. And don't forget to set the primary key and press save. That's it. Thank you for listening. See you next week.